Hello, Lou.
Hey, how's it going, Jeff?
It's going great. We finally get together to record. We've discussed. I think one time we got together to maybe record a podcast, and we just started talking business, and it lasted for hours. So, um,
Yeah.
but here we got a legit thing. You got a Kickstarter, an MCC/DCC compatible adventure called the Time Lost Citadel.
Nice effect.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
yeah, that wasn't. I didn't have to use special effects for that. That was all in mic. So you got this post-apocalyptic goodness, which is a follow-up. Not only is it a follow-up, but it is a prequel to the previous adventure, right?
Well, it's not a prequel. It's a sequel, but
Oh, it's a sequel. Why do I
yeah.
think
And I tried
sequel?
to yeah. Um, there is this other thing floating out there that so you've got the first adventure was the Seekers of the Unknown, which kickstarted last November, and this one's meant to kind of be a sequel to it, but it can also stand on its own legs. But then there's a little mini adventure coming out in Scientific Barbarian #5 that Jim had me do for him. That's kind of like a little tie-in piece that kind of fills in the gap between the two, kind of explains, how the old tech equipment that's found in Seekers is revitalized to be able to use to jump onto the Red Planet here in the new one, which is kind of a sword and planet adventure. So it's a I don't know, it's a lot of things, I guess. It's post-apocalyptic, it's sword and planet, it's a whole bunch of stuff in the kitchen sink that it's all fun to play with, kind of.
Well, I think it's also whatever you have is also through the lens of Mutant Crawl Classic, so that creates its own distortion filter.
Oh, for sure.
So just briefly, why don't you just kind of just give a summary of the first adventure, just what
Sure.
that's about.
Yeah, so these adventures are part of a line that I'm doing called the Classics Mutated. And what I'm trying to do is go back and find some of the best adventures I've ever played back in the early days of role playing. Look at what were the memorable points in them and what was so good about them, and then irradiate them and take them into the Mutant Crawl Classics world and change them up such that someone that's played both isn't it's not like they're replaying something they've already played, but
Right.
yet they come across things and they're like, oh, that's like what that's the parallel to this part of that other story. So the first one, Seekers of the Unknown, is I cannot confirm nor deny that it's similar to an old TSR module, similar in name. In this version, the Seekers, which is what MCC calls the character party, they come across this old bunker, this ancient war bunker from back before the cataclysm that destroyed Terra, which is what they call Earth. And it turns out that these soldiers at this bunker were fighting this alien incursion. And so they go through the bunker, and it's really just a sandbox. There's lots of crazy stuff going on there, lots of things that have gone haywire. In particularly, there's a robot that was kind of a medical assistant, and the bunker was led by these two kind of famous heroes of their epoch, and one of them, this kind of techno shogun character, Rogo Khan, he was killed in battle, and this robot's been given the task of kind of like trying to clone him. Only the DNA it recovered is faulty, so it's going off into Terra and sampling things and bringing them back. And that's part of why the heroes even get to the bunker is people from their tribe have been being abducted. And so you got that thing wandering around the bunker, kind of almost like a Jack the Ripper scenario where it'll teleport into an area and try to abduct characters and teleport back out. And so you got kind of that, but overall it's just a sandbox, a lot of crazy stuff. And one of the most memorable rooms that the characters will come across is this underground hangar with all these like broken down hover tanks and war machines and stuff. And it has this big screen on the wall that they're looking out into, and all they see is this red panorama of rock and dust, and then in the very far distance they see a step pyramid. And what it is, that screen is actually the space gate that the soldiers could move through, and they had created it so they could basically take the battle home to the aliens, and go to their home world and finish them once for all. And the mission was a total failure, and you can even see, in the modules described, you can see little, bits of bones sticking out from the sand, and broken down machines and whatnot. So that's kind of how the first one is, and its connection to this next one, where the characters actually go through the space gate and explore the Martian homeworld here, the red planet. Now, part of why they do that is explained away in that mini adventure, but largely the idea is, as they're looking through the thing, they can see that there is a lot of tech, just buried there. And it's like, well, the big thing in MCC is going out and recovering ancient artifacts. So you got all these weapons and stuff just kind of laying on the ground there. But then also they start to get this vision of a person wandering, from that step pyramid to the camera. And so there's this whole tie-in of if they go and actually watch over a space of a long period of time, they actually see, a little dot appear on the horizon, and it gets closer and closer. And there's this ragged man in blowing clothes. And eventually when the character gets close to the camera, they're able to use a holographic device to show them what to adjust on it to make it work again. And then it turns out, and I don't want to go too far into the
No, it's fine.
into the description, take up all the time here, but it turns out they tell you that, all those soldiers that were at this bunker, they're still alive. There's this time loss, this is wretched dilated space of time there at the step pyramid, and those soldiers have been captured by the aliens, and we need your help to go rescue them. And so that's kind of the thing. One of the big spins on it, and I'll quit yammering here in just a moment, but one of the big spins on it, I was thinking, okay, we're going to go to this alien planet. There'll be all this alien technology. And then once I sat down to start writing that, I'm like, well, wait a minute, in MCC, everything the characters run across is alien technology.
Right.
They're like Stone Age characters. So I'm like, I gotta take this another direction. And that's where it really hit into the sword and planet stuff. I'm like, what if the aliens are, mentalists with some, magical powers and whatnot? So we went in that direction, and it fit real well with the module that this one's based off of, another Lost City sort of module, where these aliens have encountered this sort of eldritch being who's gifted them this magic on the condition that they provide him with sacrifices. And so that's what some of this stuff's about. And it's all kind of explained away as the characters explore that area, and then other areas of the planet where there's some refugee alien groups and stuff that aren't part of the magic cult. So that's, in a nutshell, that's what it is.
Well, that sounds cool. So it sounds like you've, this is actually quite an expansive area, at least this, and whoever's buying into this can, or they choose to do a one shot from the previous one or continue on, or whichever direction you go, it allows people to either dovetail in or just take the whole path as it is.
For sure. Yeah. And that's one of the things about it. And I guess we'll probably get into this later, but as I'm writing it, you've got, okay, I want to have just this real simple, straightforward dungeon crawl, go into the temple, go through all the Indiana Jones passages and all that, and take out this eldritch being and save the people, yay rah. But then it's on this other planet, so then you got to have, well, it's got its own atmosphere and its own, things you got to think about as the characters are trying to survive as they go through it. And that's a big part of Sword and Planet also, is the alien environment changing how a person, changing their physiology or whatever. You see that with like John Carter being really strong when he's on Mars and all that. So we got some of that going on, and some of the dangers of the low oxygen atmosphere that have to be attended to by the players. But then you also have to expand outward with you got alien monsters, and other cultures on this planet, and so it got to be this, what I was thinking would be this little sit down meal ends up being a 7-course feast that. So yeah, there's all that stuff that game masters can let the players just wander all about and do all these other little.
Yeah, they call it scope creep.
yeah. I definitely had scope creep on this one. Yes.
Yeah, it's a danger of any project, especially when you don't have a limit. I mean, you don't have a theoretical limit. I mean, you say how many pages it is, how many pages it's going to be. It's like then it's very easy to just do. to allow scope creep to happen. As I know
Yeah,
all too well.
and that's a huge danger, right? Of being an amateur writer like me versus a professional, because professional knows that, look, you hit over this many pages, your format changes and what you can do, and like, for example, my first adventure Seekers was saddle stitch, and that's a really nice format for a lot of people because it lays flat. It's easy to consume. Um, it stays together well and endures the test of time. But once you hit over, with my printer that they're saying about 50 pages, you can't really saddle stitch. The way
I-
saddle stitch is made, and
Well, Journey to the Madlands was 64. I think that's about as maybe 64. Is that right? Yeah, 64.
I can go pull it. It's one of my
Yeah,
faves. I can
no, but I think it's 64.
Okay.
And so
Yeah, and different printers say different things on that, I think.
well, but the problem is it doesn't close flat nicely. And I think you could press them. And it's also thick paper. I mean, I just went with the thickest paper I could get. So, but I'm just saying is I think you could do 64 without a problem. It's just that go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say the other thing, and again, this is inside baseball kind of thing, is with saddle stitch, because it's what do you call that, inside itself.
Yeah.
It's early in the morning here, folks. Because every page is inside the next page, your inner pages have to be cut off shorter than your outer pages. And so once you get a lot of pages, that makes a huge difference. Your lettering's right up against the margin on the inside pages, and a half-inch away on the outside pages if you get too many of them. So yeah, you don't think about that stuff when you're writing.
Yeah, you just got to allow for
living.
larger margins. Is what you got to do. And if you can find somebody that's already done some, I ran into a similar situation. I contacted man, it is, the mornings I have problems with names. Anyway, Trevor Stamper, because he's got some thicker zines, and I called him and asked him to do some measurements for me. So it's like, okay, if you allow for 1/8 of an inch of cutoff, or in addition to your 1/2 inch margin, you're fine. So if you do 3/4 margin, you're fine. But you're right, your margin's going to, as you get towards the middle, it's going to get smaller and smaller and smaller. And you got to account for that, because if you put stuff in that margin, like page numbers or section names, border art, yeah, you're just going to start cutting into that, and that could be okay, as a friend would say. But I think you can do it with 64 without a problem. And there are limits, but the limits, I think, tend to be more who can staple it.
Well, even on so this is the Seekers. I don't know how many people are listening, how many people are watching, but you can see it almost starts to get like square on the edge.
Yeah,
you get more and more pages. This one was, I think, 50 something, 56 maybe, 58, but I don't know. Anyhow, yeah. So there's just things you don't think of when you don't do this for a living, and you want to just let yourself write. It's like, oh, the more the merrier. People love this content, but then it changes your format and how you can present it, and that can, a lot of people do not like the perfect bound books, because you can't leave them open on the table and have things right there in front of you. They always want to fold back up, and the binding always breaks eventually, it seems like. So,
well, that happened to me with Fane. The whole intent was for that to be a zine, and I still could probably technically, with 100 and some odd pages, still find somebody to staple it. But the question is, do I really want that? And I think the answer is no. I don't want that.
What do you got going on for Fane, as far as, like, do you have a lot of maps and things like that, like the peripheral type stuff?
No, I only have it's the weirdest thing. It's really not an adventure. It's there's just some art. So the way it works out is, so this started out as me wanting to do a Hyperborean style game. And the idea was to go to it centered around not Afghanistan. Okay. And so there were plans, a group. It didn't really work out. I got, sometimes you get a group of people and everybody throws some stuff in and it goes forward. And other times people say, yeah, I want to do it. Nothing really ever happens. So that's what got me started writing. And so it's like, well, in order to create this area, you know, part of the sword and sorcery is the idea is you have like some sort of creepy deity, creepy cult,
Get the
creepy
Cthulhu
something
kind of.
wizard. So that I thought, well, why not do something tied with flies? And so then it's like, well, I'll do a city, a region, and then I'll do this Fane. I think I came up with Fane, the fly god. So okay, that was good. But then I thought, well, what if I just do spells and I can just reskin them around fly themes, like just lean heavily, just reskin them. They're still the same spells, but just rewrite the narrative around them.
And these are like a BX style spell.
What I did was I went to the different SRDs. I went to 3.5. I did 3.5. I did 5.0. And I think I looked at might have been BX. It's in a BX kind of format, but so, you know, it's like sleep. All have handled sleep a little differently. All have handled, I don't know, the various spells. There's variations.
The magic missile that does 1d4 per level, or so many more missiles, or
yeah,
it's a little different enough that it just annoys you, right? You're like, I know the spell, but not in the system.
Exactly. So, but what I did was I didn't do all of them. I just did the ones I thought would be gross and kind of fit within the theme, without so much thinking about the spells being just strictly combat. It really was never what it was intended. It was never intended for player characters to get a hold of this and say, yeah, I want to do this. Really what it was is characters to see what's happening, and for players to go, oh my goodness, that's gross, or that's weird, or no thanks. You know what I mean? Because so and what I did is some of these I went back to really, what does the spell about? Like say purify food and water. Well, the idea is you're cleansing whatever is bad. So what if you flipped it around?
What
if you change the person and the person's able to eat vile stuff like a fly?
That way. Okay. I wasn't thinking about that.
And so, and then what I was planning on doing is saying it also, but if you're going to do that, so just turn them into, they transmogrify into somewhat, their heads and the mouths change, the brains get rewired,
proboscis kind of thing.
And they are vomiting, whatever, and they are out of their minds, completely out of their minds while the feeding goes on. But what I did is I rewrote it so that the effect lasts longer. And the thought was, I never did any sort of ritual magic. It's like, well, if they were to do ritual magic, the clerics would do this, and this would allow them to be further empowered to do whatever it is they do. So the idea would be not that players would know, but maybe they'd be in a situation where they need to eat. There's nothing but offal or rotting carcasses or feces, and they're going to die, or they're going to lose stats, or they're going to lose whatever. Here's your choice. Cleric says, hey, what about that? Whatever it may be. Or they come in on a scene where this is going on. And also then I took it and I wrote some of this into the narrative of the NPCs and situations for the setting. So the setting is a city, and not Afghanistan. And then so I did the spells, and as I did the spells, because you talked about when we chat on Facebook Messenger, you stated how you kind of go in. I guess I'll let you describe it. So when you're writing, before you start writing, you mentioned a state of mind. What was it? How did you mention that?
I mean, I think I talked about it. It's like a fever dream, right? It's like when I'm like, okay, I'm going to write something, and I normally have some idea of what it's going to be generally about, but then it's just like trying to imagine like the coolest images I can of that nature, like, so in this case, I had this imagination of, wouldn't it be neat to see something on that, view screen, and to wonder what it was, and to wait, have it slowly get closer and closer. There's this alien creature on the planet that's kind of this centaur-like thing that's giant. That's just this pastiche of Harryhausen films that I've watched. And it's like, I gotta get something like that in there, and just different
so
things.
do you do that? Do you do that at the keyboard, or is this pre-work that you're just doing? Like you're doing work on the farm, and you're just saying, "Hey, while I'm doing this."
Yeah, that's a lot of it. Is I'm doing something else, taking hay out to the cows, and suddenly it'll be like an image, and I'll be like, I should do something with that, and then I'll go back in afterwards and maybe write it in a little notebook. So I start with this, spiral bound notebook with just ideas written down in it. And then it becomes a typed outline where I've kind of clarified them and tried to unify them with some sort of theme or some sort of purpose of, why is that creature there, or how does that connect with these other things going on the planet, in this case. So yeah, and it's just, it's almost like a guy that doesn't know how to draw, sort of like myself, sketching over and over again until you finally get those lines to form something that somebody else could identify,
No, that makes sense. And what I did is probably not quite, because I don't know I did the pre-work, but I kind of have certain ideas. So I'll write the spells, and I'll just think, I want to just do something gross. And I try not to think about it, and I just write. And then as I write, I may throw in some deities, and I might throw in some locations. But I've not written up the deities. And then once I've written up these named places, then I go through and write up the deities and write up the locations. But sometimes writing up the deities or the locations may also cause me to write up other locations. And so then in the end, that's where you wind up with like over 100 pages.
Yes, that's where I'm living right there. That is, yeah, you're right. You play around in this circle, and then it starts to touch this other circle. You got to play in there some more. And so, I mean, you were saying it's not an adventure. So, I mean, from the sounds of it, it's at least like a setting.
It is, but it isn't. I don't know how to describe it. Really what it is, it's inspiration. So there's also, when I say locations, there's also extra dimensional locations. And so those are possibilities for character, so people to take characters to, or not.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the spells are related to those locations. And so the effect may be related to a location. So, and what turned into a sword and sorcery setting just turned into a transdimensional look at I guess what I'm doing, I don't know how to describe it. Basically, the intent is you read it. If you like it, you just find stuff. You're like, I can use this. I can use that. I can use this. I can use that, without really the intent to say, I'm going to take this and run so, because you really can't take it and run anything. But you can take this and put it in your setting, or you can take the spells and put it in your setting, or you put the deities in your setting, or you take ideas from a location into your setting.
Would you say that because what you're describing really to me sounds, it sounds like a setting. I mean, or at least,
it's a unified cosmology, but without the intent necessarily of, I hand it to you and you could say, yeah, I can run something. You will not be able, there's not really an adventure to run, but
it's the only thing.
Go ahead.
It's the only thing missing, like just, some plot moving things forward, or some, event that the characters have to deal with. I mean, is that?
Yeah, exactly. And what's happened is, I realized after I wrote this was basically, there's an undertone of Temple of the Blood Moth. So there's an apocalyptic event that will occur thousands of years in the future. But you don't have to stop it. In fact, there are beings who are working to that end, who could be working with characters, and maybe short-term goals, they're aligned. But you don't have to. I mean, it really is, it's just, it is definitely a, I don't know how to explain it. It's just a lot of real evocative stuff thrown together, but it is unified. It's completely unified, but but it's not Forgotten Realms.
Oh man, it's let's wait for this. So when I was first getting into role playing, like I love the Forgotten Realms, everything Forgotten Realms. You know, I got all those, you know, what are they, the FREs or whatever, the ones that had all the maps that connected together and everything Forgotten Realms. And then as I got older, it's like, man, I'm carrying a boulder with me, man. All this information is just crushing me. I can't, you know, but so I like that. It's not the Forgotten Realms.
So there is this, like for instance, there's a location that is a small planet. It's Iris, and ancient civilization pretty much died. What was left kind of became degenerate. A deity came and intervened and just creates problems. But in this planet, it's frozen, but there's volcanic portions where it's not frozen and people can live. If a person wanted to expand on that, you could do a sword and sandal
right there,
where you have, instead of desert, you have patches of frozen waste, and then there's pockets of maybe jungle.
Like it.
I mean, you could do that.
It reminds me a lot of. Did you ever have like the old the Gazetteers and their box sets and stuff from the original Dungeons and Dragons line?
The only one I've had has been Greyhawk.
Oh, okay. They had one called Hollow World, which was like they basically
Mystera?
took and made
Mystera?
It's the inside of Mystera, yeah. And what you're describing reminds me a lot of that box set, like how it was laid out. Like it's like here's kind of like this whole world that you can connect to the stuff you're already doing, but it's got pantheons, it's got, you know, different locations, different spells, different, you know, way of thinking about things cosmologically. So yeah, that's interesting stuff, man.
Yeah, I mean, really, my hope is with the whole thing is just it's the idea is it's kind of like I don't want to say it's like the DMG because that's presumptuous and it's also not quite true. But you know how you can go through the DMG and you can just read stuff and there's inspiration to be gained. There is a unification to it, but it's not necessarily, you look at it, you're like, I don't know who edited this thing, but
it's like a garage sale. Yeah. You're just table after table. You don't know what you're going to find, but you're happy to be there. Yeah.
Yeah. So there, you know, so then there's spells, there's deities, and there's locations, and those locations are different. So the first location, the beginning is actually is on a normal planet. The locations elsewhere are not.
Interesting. Yeah, a lot of, like you're saying, I mean, it gives somebody a lot of different directions they can go with things and you know, pick and choose what they want. Yeah.
Yeah, and there may be instances where you say, you know what, I don't want that whole plant to be that way, but you know, a region like this would be kind of cool. Go for it. It's not, but there is a dungeon. There's a dungeon to the Fane, but it may not be really what characters ever go to do because, you know, the reward there is not really anything happy. Okay, you got what you want. Too bad. Roll new characters. Are you sure you really want to do this? So, yeah, but it's just, but the thing is, it's all intended to be, I don't know. It is nothing but the hubris of me just sitting down and saying, I'm going to write a thing, and whatever it's going to be is what it's going to be. Probably after this, I won't say I'll never ever do anything like this, but probably everything after this is going to be more defined.
Yeah, that's the pledge I made to myself after this one, is that, you know, in the future, I'm going to set, you know, I'm going to know what I want it to be, you know, format wise, and I'm going to set my boundaries, and I'm going to work within the boundaries. But
yeah, and that's what's been the problem is the boundaries start becoming, okay. So like we have, I have 6 kids. So when you go to the 4th child, things change because you can no longer, you have to have a van.
Yeah. Yeah, we have 4 kids, so I know that one. Yeah.
So then, but the problem is once you have, but there's also a certain point where most vans have 5 seats in the back, 3, then 2, and then the 2 passenger up front. So then once you have the 6th child, normal minivans don't work. So then we had to, but we were able to buy a back bench and put it in the middle bench. So then it was three. But I'm just saying is bedrooms change, right? What you need for bedrooms start changing.
Yep.
And then, because like if you're all boys, you're like, who cares? We should have boys and girls. And it starts. My point is, if you're just saying, you know what, we're just 2 kids, it's one thing. 3 kids is another. 4 kids is another. 5 is another. 6 is another. And that's the same thing with your projects, because you're right. Whatever you do has an effect afterwards that you don't necessarily realize. Okay, it's like,
yeah. So
go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, like in my situation, I mean, because I've got the wilderness map of the planet's surface, I've got the city map of the Lost Citadel, and then I've got the interior dungeon maps of the pyramid and also some cave maps. You can't, like, if you put that in a perfect bound book, it's you can't, it's all mushed in there. Whereas if it's saddle stitched, people have the option of, if you can print it on the covers, they can take those off, which is what I did with the first one. Or you can put it on an interior page, in the center where it's easy to take out of there. But it constricts you, and then you end up having to decide. Like right now, I'm hoping that the Kickstarter hits at. I'm trying to get to 3,500, which will allow me to print it up as actual separate books, where there's an adventure book that has all the maps and stuff and all that kind of contained in it, and then like a little guidebook that has more of the surface stuff and the monster write-ups and all that. But if I don't hit that, I've
3,500, you're going to hit that. You're at 2,954 at this moment.
Oh wow, I've had some people hit recently. Thank you, everybody. But yeah, I think I'll hit it. I'm hopeful.
I know.
On in the campaign,
you'll hit it, but it's that pit in your stomach that's just like, what if that's everybody?
Yep.
Anyway, yeah. So okay, so let's just stop. Let's just take this down. You're unpacking a lot. So currently where it stands, what's the format of the book?
Yeah. So out of the gate, it's going to have to be perfect bound. But I worked out a thing with my printer to get a fold out map. So it'll be a book with a map in it. And that map will have, the majority of the stuff you might want to throw out on the table or have, readily available.
Right. So it's a perfect bound book. How many pages?
It's going to be 100 plus. I'm still waiting on some art to kind of figure out final layout, but 100 plus pages with art.
Okay. So it's 100 plus pages with art, perfect bound with a map. So, and you're using, I'm assuming, are you using print on demand?
No, it's actually offset print, but it's I've got a local printer that's doing it, so I'm getting about 300 copies any which way I go, because whatever I have left, I'll sell on con circuits and whatnot.
So they're doing offset; they're not doing digital.
I believe so. The machinery they showed me was an offset print, but I mean, it wasn't a very big one though. To be honest, I'm not really as attuned on the technical side of things there, but it didn't, usually the digital prints, one of these massive copier machine things, and it wasn't one of those. It was more of like an assembly line kind of unit where things fed through it. So I don't know.
You're at 300. That's so you've got 105 backers. And when you said you hit 3,500, you're going to go from a 100 page perfect bound with an insert that you're going to put in there. What is it going to go to at 3,500?
At 3,500, it allows me to do a saddle stitch book with a cover that's got double-sided. And that'll allow me to put like the game master maps on the inside of that cover with the numbers and secret passages and all that junk are on there. And that book's going to be about 50 pages. And then I'll have like a little journal-sized, thinner paper, kind of more, I'm trying to get something, almost like a magazine kind of feel to it. Pocket guide to the Red Planet, which will have, a lot of the survival information in it, all the creatures on the planet, all the random encounter stuff. And then also a fold out map that's now going to be double sided with all the stuff made to be player facing on it.
Okay, so that is a huge jump in content.
Yes and no. Like honestly, the only thing content wise that I'm going to change is I don't have to edit out as much of the planet stuff that I would have to if I just go with the 100-page one. And then also, I have to do the maps so that they're not just GM maps, but they're also player maps. But I probably do that anyhow because I normally release map images to the backers to be able to do VTT, and so I try to erase all the stuff you don't want the players to see on it.
Right, but the thing is, what you've done is these are going to be physical copies. So I need to go look at the pledge. So there's only, what are the pledge levels? I'm going to go back to manage my pledge. I think, is that it? No, that's not it. What is, so your pledge levels,
So
there it is. It is $20. So I did the $20 one. There's a $13 one for a PDF and an $80 one for a
multiple copies, yeah.
And then
Brick and
there's
mortar,
$100 or more for you get some character in there.
Yeah, you get to just get your character to appear in one of the art pieces, which is a way that was a clever way. Hopefully it's a clever way if it works out. I've got an artist that I really want to use on this. I've gotten a few things from him, and he did me a real good favor and sold me some art at a level I could afford, which was a pretty good discount off of what he normally charges. But I'd like to pick up a couple more pieces from him. But to get at the level that I need it to be for him, I gotta sell these. I gotta make it like, okay, you pay me 100. I'm gonna put your character in this art, and that way I get the art I want from this guy at the price that he needs. Everybody's happy, right?
Exactly, because right. So that works sense. But really, you are adding for the so for the $20, $20 plus $8 shipping and handling, you're adding more printed content.
Mm-hmm. It's just a volume thing. If I can ensure that I've got that much money from this project, number wise, it works out to where I'm not going to lose money going into the other format. So
yeah, you're definitely throwing some really good stuff out there at a low level. Which is, I mean, it's fine because this kind of stuff I've thrown in. I know that when I was doing Fane, my first thing was I'm going to go full color, and then I saw the cost. And I'm like, wow, this is not cool. I think prices went up. So
yes,
it's like, okay, I'm going to go black and white, and it's like, okay, now I'm to the point where I'm going to, because of the size of it, color is impractical. Unless I hit over $10,000. I mean, it just is not practical. So my plan is to just kind of say at this point, I'm just going to go with the lowest quality, work my way up on paper, work my way up to, and so forth. But, that's definitely, as you go, that does affect, because one thing I could do is instead of doing 100-page perfect bound, I could do like I did with Scoundrels. I could do multiple zines.
Mm-hmm. Well, that might even make sense with your content, since you have kind of a content of.
It's a headache. As you make one change to one. Well, the problem I had is I had 3 of them. Then I would change my mind on. I would change my mind on some sort of layout detail. Like, you know what? I think I'm going to change this, and then have to do it all in 3 different documents over and over again. That was awful, but it also increases your cost. So when you do your proof copies, it's expensive having proof copies. And if you do 3 of them, that's significant. So I think I'm just going to do the perfect bound. And that's just the way it's going to be. But it's just, I'm ready. But what you're doing, I'm saying, my point is, here there's definitely added costs when you start doing additional books,
physical books. Yeah. But yeah, and I'm in a sweet situation with this printer I found, the National Group, which is a local printer for me. If I didn't have that, I don't know that I could do it like this. But like, I can literally go over there on my lunch break, and go see what they got going on with my product. And I don't have to pay shipping. I don't have to wait around for, proof copies. They'll print one today. If it's not right, tomorrow they print another. Uh, and they've just been really, really good to me. So, that's something I've printed all my Dare Luck Club stuff that I did before these modules. I printed all those, via the internet from different printers throughout the nation. And that was a whole different headache. So I don't know. I'm glad I decided. I was like, no, I wonder if anybody local prints anything, and I wonder what they can do for me. I'm so glad I went down that avenue. That was a big game changer for me.
Yeah, it's finding a printer is kind of confusing. When I first did my area, everything came up like photocopy shops, and it wasn't very simple. But then one day I drove by a printer, which I had driven by many, many, many times. All of a sudden the thought hit me like, wait a minute. That's not a copy shop. I can get quotes from them. And it is. So no, that's very commendable. So we're right. So that's the thing is, as you go, you can hit like it becomes a different thing. So there's a certain point where saddle stitch doesn't work or doesn't work. There's a point where there's a sweet spot for saddle stitch. There's a point where you can do saddle stitch, but it's not the best. And there's a point where you can no longer do saddle stitch. And then you may say, you know what? Like for instance, I'm doing another project much smaller in scope. Was going to do color. I kind of went back and looked at that. It does double the cost to do color, but it's a small enough item that doing it in color, even if you double the cost, it's like it's not that big a deal.
So that's the thing that going back to the things you don't know when you don't do this for a living is price point. I think I'm still in a decent price point for this current Kickstarter, but you start asking people $30 for an adventure, even if it's a good amount of content, 100 pages, that's fairly good content for $30. But some people are like, not for an adventure. No, not unless it's hardbound, Wizards of the Coast full color, I don't know. Price points are interesting too.
I know. And I think I'm probably underpriced. I'm fine with it. It's fine. But during the Madlands, probably a little bit underpriced.
I can tell you for sure you did. I would have gone a lot higher for it. And I'm not just saying that because I'm on your program. I mean, that was really, when I got that in the mail, I was like, I don't know what this is going to be like, but I've heard people say good things. And I got it. I was like, man, just blown away. I was like, that was a really good deal.
Yeah. So then it's like, because I'm like, I think with me, it's like, you can go and you can buy modules for really from major companies for like $25, $30. And then maybe, like discount on Amazon, but you can pick up a Wizards of the Coast D&D module hardback for like $31. Mm-hmm. And then you start saying, I want $30 for this paperback, or, it's like, doesn't have near the pages, doesn't have near the art, it's like, who's going to pay that when and that's where it becomes, it's easy as a person to start doubting oneself.
Yeah. Devaluing your work. And
so I would say to me, but I'm no expert because right now, this is, how many projects have you done?
This will be my fifth. I've had two companies. If you count the other company, this will be my 8th publication. If you just count this company, this will be my 5th.
Yeah, so you're already 4 times more experienced than I am, but I still think with what you're saying, when you say I'm going to add a booklet and I'm going to add another little booklety thing, it's like, or what pamphlet, whatever it's going to be, it's like $20 pretty cheap. Like, I think you probably get 30.
And that's the other thing is, when you do a Kickstarter, you gotta also you gotta make it worth the while for people to buy it right then. So I mean, you got to think about okay, what's your retail cost and what discount can you give these people buying it, as they fund you here in Kickstarter. And so my retail cost on it's going to be, I'm looking at about $25. So, you got to give them something. So I'm like, $5 off, and they'll be paying shipping anyhow. So, and that's the other thing. I had to up my shipping costs. I'm up at $8 now. For me, I'm like, people even want it for $8 shipping. I don't know.
I don't think people, so the shipping, so you put the shipping in with the, you're not using backer kit.
Not yet. I think this might be the one, depending on how it goes, that breaks me of doing it myself.
Yeah, because I think the backer kit, what I've thought about too is hope there's nobody from the government listening. I I was just thinking that Kickstarter somehow, I don't know why it was collecting taxes, but they're not.
No, you got to report that. Yep.
So no, I mean, as far as I'm sorry, not federal taxes or state income tax, but sales tax.
Yeah.
So I just I may or may not have reported sales tax this year, but next year with backer kit, you can make that an item, and then they send you reports. So then, you know, they collect it, and then you already have a record of how many, you know, the whole thing. So that being said, and also I looked at the price of backer kit. I don't think I think at our level or so, it may only be like $40 for what they offer. But what they do offer too is you can buy, you can get people to buy additional stuff at the end.
Mm-hmm.
So if like there's another opportunity to buy, you know, whatever past products you have, whatever you want to throw in there, which is nice. So I think I may go with that. It's just still kind of nerve wracking. Like,
now, do they charge? You're saying $40? Is that like a setup fee? Is that like for the whole thing, or is that a monthly fee?
You pay based on how big your Kickstarter is.
Okay, by percent kind of.
And if you could go right now, it's not always, it wasn't logical to get where it actually had me put in the amounts, but you go put in your amount for your Kickstarter and it would tell you how much it would charge you for it. But they don't charge you until after the Kickstarter's done. So if you, let's say you do a Kickstarter and you maybe do let's say, you know, like say maybe you do $1,000, maybe it's $50. Maybe if you do $2,000, maybe it's $75. If you do,
it's sliding scale kind of.
Yeah. So the more you do, basically, the less less of a percentage of your overall campaign. So initially, maybe it's, you know, if you the low end, maybe it's 5%, but maybe on the higher end, it's only 1%.
Yeah, I have to check that out. You know, every percent matters when you're self-publishing, but yet, you know, if you know, last time I think at the end I had about 200 people I had to ship stuff out to, a little over that, I think. But anyhow, it was a day of work, you know, and then I, you know, frustrated a lot of people going in to get, you know, the labels for packages, for stamps, and
they won't fulfill it for you. All they're doing is so when you do, so right now with Kickstarter, you have so you put in your shipping and handling charges. So the Kickstarter is going to take 10% of that amount, right?
I think it's 5.
Well, when you do the Amazon charges and the Kickstarter, it's actually 10%. You're losing 10% with all the weird fees. So the Kickstarter may only be 5, but the whatever might be 4, and another one might be 1. It's just it's weird. But you can figure about 10% is what of your campaign is going to into Kickstarter's pocket. And so it's not necessarily a bad deal, but let's say shipping is let's say that's, you know, like maybe 25% of your shown revenue. You're not making money off of shipping necessarily. And so then to pay a percentage on the portion that you're not getting any money from is
they take their money off the top number, not off of just your, because for folks that don't know, when you, depending on how you set things up, typically when you do Kickstarter, you've got, you know, what you want to make funding wise and what you set your reward levels at. But then you also typically will go in and tell them what you want to collect shipping wise, if you're doing it through them and not through like backer kit. And they take their percent off the whole kit and caboodle, not just off of what the product costs or you're charging for or whatever.
Yeah, and it can be, you know, that can be quite significant. So my feeling is backer kit, the downside with backer kit in my mind is it's another layer that people have to, It may not really be. It feels like it's another layer that people have to do. So you go through all the stuff for your Kickstarter, then you have to do additional stuff for BackerKit, as far as a consumer. And I'm always wondering where that will fail. But the idea is then that's where you can throw in your shipping is on the BackerKit. That's where they have to pay for the shipping.
So I guess I've misunderstood. I always thought that BackerKit collected extra information, kind of like your surveys do, that they offered additional products, did the shipping, and then I thought they actually physically shipped it, but they just collect the shipping.
Yeah, they don't physically ship it.
Oh.
Do you do pirate ship?
No, but after listening to some of your programs, I am going to be looking into that. Currently, my go-to is I've got a little hometown post office I go up to, and she lets me say, hey, this is the weight of the package. I need X many labels for that amount of postage, and then she lets me secretly go off and go back to my garage and put all those labels on the package and bring them back and drop them in. So
what you can do with the report that you get from Kickstarter, if you're good with Excel, you don't have to be real good, is you just get rid of the extra fields you don't need on the back report. And then you just import it into Pirate Ship, the spreadsheet. And in Mass, it will create all the labels, and then you get a thermal printer and it just starts spinning up labels, and and then you just take it to the post office and everything's done. You've already paid for it.
That's nice. And do they charge monthly or by the project, or?
So Pirate Ship, I think where they get their money, I don't know, is they are selling postage. I think they're buying postage from the post office at a discounted rate. So you are paying whatever it is you would pay at the post office. There is no cost, additional cost to using Pirate Ship.
Really? You just got to get that printer and you're good to go, huh?
We don't even need to do that. You can print on a regular. Okay, so we'll get into the dark secrets here. So you can get your regular printer and you can print out on regular paper, and you can use tape to tape that to your envelope. You can
just get some of those Avery sticky sheets to go in it or whatever. Yeah.
But no, what you do is you can order, if you go with the thermal printer, you can go to UPS on site and they will ship you free like 6,000 labels, like a 10-pound box of labels for free. They'll do it right on your doorstep. And then you just hook it up to your printer and you put in your 50 names and you hear it. It just spits them out. It just keeps spitting them out. It keeps spitting them out.
Tricks of the trade.
And it just keeps going. And you just put them all on there and you just take it to the post office. It's all I got to do is go scan and it's ready to go. And nice. If you have problems, if you also have problems, you haven't used it yet, you can get money refunded. It also does tracking. So from that website, you could track packages. You can give tracking. It's like crazy.
Huh.
And then what you can also do, since you have a thermal printer, what I do is I go ahead and I already prepackaged a lot of books, that extra, and then I just print out labels to tell me what they are, so that when I go to do it later on, so it'll go. So no, it's about, I think I might have paid about 180. I paid how much for the printer? But yeah, it saved me post office. So you had a more amiable post office. When I would go there, it took them a long time to manually do each one.
Yeah, I would never do this at the main, post office. This is I live next to this little, I don't know, 500-person town that has one of the last remaining tiny little post offices where it's got the wooden boxes behind the person and all that crap. So yeah, she's real nice in there, and I don't think she's supposed to let me take those labels out of the office, but she was nice enough to be like, hey, if you get them back to me by the end of the day, we're good.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and I think the thing is so here's what I will say is you put a loose, if you put a loose cover on a book, are you shipping media mail?
So okay, yeah, I got kind of stung on this on the last one. So according to the postmaster that I talked to live on the phone, no gaming material at all, whether the cover's loose, whether there's a map, whether there's anything. If it's a gaming material, if it's meant to be played as a game, it doesn't count as media mail.
Oh,
And
that's
I
a
went,
lie.
I asked, no, she showed me on the website, and she's like, look, you know, crossword puzzles, nope, not media mail. If you got a magazine with them in them, not media mail. Okay, all this stuff, and so I don't know. Here, the dirty secret is though, 99.9% of the time you can ship anything that looks like a book media mail.
Yes.
But she showed me and instructed me that no, man, anything that's a game, even if it looks like reading material, if it's meant to be played, if it's
That's interesting because I never saw, I believe you. I just know that when I went on the website and looked at definitions, nothing like that was ever stated to the public.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what it was, what site she took me to, but it was, I mean, it didn't like clearly say no games, but the things that were up there that counted didn't include things that were games. It included like informational pieces and pros and things like that. But
yeah, and you can send CDs and tapes.
well, yeah, and that's the thing. Yeah, I mean, you can, movies count, but you can't send it. It just doesn't make any sense. It's kind of random.
So are you now doing media mail?
I don't know what I'll do on this next run here. I think I will ship things out as Dandyline books instead of Dandyline games. That might be one change up I make on my labels. But I don't know what I'll do.
Well, I think the point is if you're going to a small post office, you get scot-free. In fact, having a loose cover doesn't let you do media mail, but if she doesn't,
right.
The gal doesn't care at a small post office. I'd be much more inclined to do stuff like there's times where it's like, you know what, I would like to have a loose cover, a heavy stock cover and it's detachable, like without having to go through or throw in some cardboard or some like not cardboard, it makes some like thick sheets of paper that could be used for, or a bookmark, things like that. But there's things you really can't do because once they open it, then if they open it and are so disposed, you're gonna have some problems.
Well, it got real crazy because the one that got busted was the big package I was sending to Goodman Games with all the game. They ordered, I think, 55 copies of the last one. So I made the mistake of actually shipping it to Joseph Goodman because it was his home address that was on the Kickstarter when I was supposed to be sending it to their warehouse, but nobody had told me. So it goes out to his place over there in I think Portland or somewhere around that, and it gets damaged because I didn't have a good box to ship it in. So like one of the corners gets dinged in. Didn't damage any of the product, but so then they open it up to inspect it to make sure that whatever's in there is not damaged. They see that it's a game. They confiscate it. They're going to ship it back, and then like a couple weeks pass and I don't have it back yet. And now I'm freaking out because it's $700 worth of product or whatever. So I call them up. I'm like, what's going on here? And they're like, oh, we have it confirmed that it was delivered. And I'm like, well, it wasn't delivered to me. And they go, oh no, it's delivered in Portland. I'm like, well, no, you guys rejected it. So it turns out, I guess he had a guy at the post office that knew him. It's like, nah, man, I'm just going to deliver this, even though it's supposed to be sent back to this guy.
Oh my goodness.
It all got sorted out, but it was crazy for a while there.
Yeah, it's kind of wild. So anyway, it sounds like you got quite a bit going on for this. So I think anybody out there who might be even close, if you're not on the fence, you're even close to the fence. It's like that's going to be the best $20 you're going to spend.
I hope, man.
Yeah. So, so it sounds like you've got quite a bit. In fact, one of the artists you said is maybe it's who you're talking about, who has the Elmore style.
What's it's
not Elmore, but Holloway style. Yeah, James Holloway. Wow, my goodness,
Brian
he sure
Thomas.
does.
Oh yeah, I don't know if you're looking at the Kickstarter, there's only like maybe 2 pieces of his art on there, but on my Dandyline Games Facebook page, there's a few more examples. I mean, I don't want to, it's a dangerous thing, because I don't want people to be like, oh, he's the guy that rips off Holloway, because he's got his own flair too. I mean, because I'm a huge Holloway fan, I really know a lot of his work, and I can see the differences. I can see how Brian is taking it in a little bit different direction, and has some little nuances that are his own. But yeah, man, he really has that feel. And in the game that this is based off of, the other Lost City type game, almost all the art was done by Holloway for that. So it's why I really want to have that style represented in it as much as I can.
Yeah, to me, Holloway is when I look at Star Frontiers, the apex of what Star Frontiers used to be is Holloway. I mean, that's never lived up to its promise of Holloway.
Yeah, and I mean the thing with him, I mean, people, they either love him or hate him. It seems like because they kind of think of him as kind of like the generic artist, because he did so much that his art wasn't. A lot of his art pieces are very simple pieces. They're not, not the most breathtaking ever. But then he does have, like, he did the covers to Spelljammer, the booklets that came in the Spelljammer set, and those are some really beautiful covers. He did almost all the monsters in the original Monsters Compendiums, the first 2 volumes, and some of those, like the Invisible Stalker, where it's showing the guy getting strangulated, and you can only see the shadow in the background. Or no, it's not the Invisible Stalker; it's the shadow. You see the shadow in the background strangling. He's just got such a clever way of doing some things, expressing an event or a situation.
Well, to me, what I've seen of his art is it feels a little more grounded in reality. And like, I'm just looking at just on your Kickstarter, the guy with the lamp, holding the lantern. It's like it feels a little more grounded, like real person, less necessarily super heroic. And there tends to be a little bit of a humor twist to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not necessarily really, way out there, but when it's a little bit of expression or the situations or the postures, even like Star Frontiers, huddling behind a rock while, a firefight's going on. It's just like, there's something about that. It's just like, I can see why, to me, I can see why people maybe have been less of a fan with some of the fantasy stuff. But my goodness, for Star Frontiers, I can't think of, or probably even, I'm not done much with Paranoia, but like Paranoia, I mean, he's just like, he defined, Paranoia, I think, a vibe. Yeah.
Him and Rosalind, because that was really originally, I can't think of the guy's name right now. My goodness. Anyhow, the the guy that kind of conceived of it was initially planning to make it like a very serious, Orwellsian kind of game, where it's really dark, and it was, oppression and the government coming to get you kind of thing, Big Brother. And then Rosalind and Holloway's art really totally transformed that a whole other direction. It's, dark humor, and it's just a whole other thing because of that.
Yeah. And so, yeah, that's a great, I mean, I definitely would like, now it's like, I don't have no idea what the project would be. It's like, okay, now I'd love to have a project with that guy's art. I'm only creating this project for different artists. I have in my mind several artists, like, I would like to use these people one day, and it's in the back of my mind. It's like, I need to come up with a project. You kind of reverse, right? I got a project, find the right artist. I find the artist, now come up with the right project.
Well, somebody was saying, oh man, what podcast was it? I just listened to a podcast where someone was saying that Free League did that. That Free League kind of goes out and hires artists, and they make them art, and then they're like, okay, now we're going to build a world around this and a setting around this. And that's how Forbidden Lands and some of those other ones came about.
Well, I think to some degree. Now, I think to some degree, but if you look at like Coriolis and Alien, I don't want to say it's generic, because generic's not right, but they tend to be more evocative mood pieces. Even if you look at some of the art that came out, I saw for Lord of the Rings, very evocative stuff, but not necessarily specific stuff. So it's not kind of like, oh, here's a monster, now figure out what to do with the monster. It definitely is. It sets mood, for sure. But yes, I think they may not direct the artist so much, and they may do it. But that's another thing I've kind of thought about doing is like, we're talking about bestiaries. It's like, it'd be kind of fun. It's like, okay, let's find some weird looking creatures from an artist. Okay, everybody is do a write up whatever that crazy looking creature is. We have no idea what it is. And everybody just kind of
make it so. Well, that's how, I mean, you look at like the classics, like the owl bear and the rust monster and all that. I mean, that's kind of how they came about, right? Is that Gygax had all those weird Hong Kong rubber toys, and he's like, well, what would this thing do? You know, land shark. All right, that's what we're gonna do.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's yes, because I think, you know, inspiration a lot of times comes from limiting to what you got. So
Yeah.
and that's where if you don't limit yourself, you can find yourself going nowhere. But if you say, you know what, I got a bag of toys, I got to come up with something.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was kind of interesting. Yeah, so so that's quite a, I mean, that's quite a project that you got there. So you also decided to do a month-long project.
Yeah. Oh, you mean on the kicks? Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Campaign. Yeah.
You can't see what I'm looking at. You cannot see. I forget.
So I ran the campaign for a month. I don't know if that's good or bad. I'm still figuring that stuff out. Yeah, I don't know. It allows me to be able to get out to, you know, talk, you know, like being on this program here. I mean, it's real super cool that you're having me here, so that, you know, maybe, you know, between now and when this drops, you know, or after this drops, before the campaign ends, you know, somebody might hear it and take a look at it, decide it's for them. It gives me a chance to go out and do several of those kind of things. Gives me a little more lead time on getting the product ready to go. I mean, it's all, the manuscript's done, and it's actually kind of in this kind of dual layout that I'm going through right now, but there's still art coming in, and there's still some maps I need to finish up. So that way, when the project ends, I can get the actual thing to press and back to the people, and to the person who's, you know, bought into it, that supported it. They feel like they're getting it sooner, but really it gives me an extra month of finishing it out, right? You know.
So have you used the website KickTrack?
I have not. I've had it suggested to me, and I always get my mailbox full of emails from them. I don't know, spam,
So
I guess you could call it.
I would not use this for your current project until it's done. The premise is it will give you analytics on your project as it's going. It'll make projections that will either make you excited or depressed. But either way, it'll be wrong. But my point is, I think if you do this for 30 days, what you should do is look at KickTrack. And one of the charts that will show you, and you can do this for anybody's Kickstarter. You can put anybody's Kickstarter in there, and it will tell you day to day how much money you made or how many backers you've had. And it's like looking at Vasily. He had the dungeon zine, which did really, really, really well. He went for 30 days. He got like 6 times more than he thought he was going to get. But you know, looking, he did have that, you know, we have that bathtub curve.
Yeah.
But he was getting money every day. So there was like $300, $500, $300, $200, $500, $300. So it's like, you know what, even though you're in that you're not like on this like rocket, you know, you're in this plateau, but at least you can evaluate afterwards, you know, whether it was worth going out, because, you know, it may actually, you know, it may gain you a little bit of money at the end.
That would be my question, is like, under what circumstances would you want to shorten it? I mean, even let's say you have a week where you make nothing, you know, there's no additional backers. Is it advantageous to cut that week out?
I think there's different thoughts on that. I think the idea is the sensation of nausea that comes with being on a Kickstarter. You're eliminating 2 weeks of feeling like you want to throw up in a garbage can. So that's, you don't have to. So there's a value to that. I think the idea too is, and I think if you're wanting to do, I think if you want to do multiple Kickstarters, I think there's a lot of reasons for doing it. I think one is for smaller projects, it probably makes more sense. So like if you're doing, let's say you say, I'm just going to throw out a quick zine. It's just going to be a fun, quirky thing. I don't think there's going to be a lot of people, but I just want to get this thing out there. Just, sure, do that. And I think also if you're wanting to do a lot of projects, and especially maybe less, let's say they're less expansive than yours, but let's say you want to put out like six zines a year, or 5 zines or 4 zines, you may say, you know what, I've already pretty much a lot of times have my audience. I can't leave these things hanging out. I just want to just get it over with and move on with life and keep producing.
I guess that is the thing, because, especially when you're first starting out, Kickstarter limits you to having one Kickstarter at a time. So you can't get onto that next project until this one's, totally over and it has been delivered. So that would help on that. And then I guess also getting your money too, like right now I've got all this money out for art, and until the Kickstarter's over and they send me the money, that's all on me. So I can see, cutting out the dry spots to help with that too.
Yeah, and I also don't know how many change of hearts you'll have too. Like you put the money on the table, you better take it now before they change your mind.
It is kind of a weird thing. That first time that I was doing the Kickstarter, seeing it go up and being like, all right, it's going up, it's going up, it's going up. And then one day waking up, I was like, what? How'd it go down? What's going on? I didn't know it could go down.
Yeah, and so like Phil Reed he'll a lot of times he'll just try different things. So I think, if you've got a lot of things going on in life and you're wanting to just dibble dabble here, you spent weeks and months, and it's for you, it's a pretty major project, because of all the investment. Yeah, you're going to want to put the time in and have a longer Kickstarter, but if it took you a month to crank something out, like, yeah, I'll just put it out for a week or two and just see what it does. Then just move on to the next fun thing. But what you're trying to do is a little bit different with this project. And I think, I don't say you're going to be building a line, but you're kind of, you're wanting to do something a little more significant with this project than just a little
quickie thing.
Throw it out there, see what happens. And I think the thing too, it's just like, and that might be kind of a fun thing to do, maybe next year is like, okay, maybe we all get together and do a creation to Kickstarter in a month, and then everybody has like a 1-week Kickstarter at the same time, or something goofy like that. I mean, I don't know. It's just, I'm just saying, is there may be, that it may, doing something quick and getting it out there and just doing a quick Kickstarter might just be kind of a fun exercise to do with a group of people.
Yeah, shake up your creativity a little bit. Yeah, put it under confines of time. No, that sounds great.
So I don't know. I don't know why that idea just came to my head, but it might be something. But I think there is value. But I've heard Kickstarter 2 weeks is a sweet spot, but I've also heard longer. I don't think 30 days ever generally hurts anybody.
Yeah.
But I just think it's just what what the emotional toll is on you. Is it worth it?
Yeah, like I was saying on this one, I got a little more hanging over my head as far as, I got like 40% of the art I'm still waiting on. And it's not the artist's fault at all. I kind of got things set up to launch, and then I ordered a second round of art to fill in what I needed once I had kind of a mock layout going and all that. So this, I just feel like people don't count the Kickstarter as wait time. They don't feel like, oh, I'm still waiting for that product while the Kickstarter's going. Once it's over though, your feet are on the fire. They're like, where's my thing? I ordered this thing. So it helps me to make it feel like it came faster if I give myself, a little time while the Kickstarter's going on to finish putting things together.
Yeah. And I think too, it's like you've ordered stuff ahead of time. This is what's hard, is there's a certain amount you're investing up front. I think I'm going to start working. I think some of my future projects, I think I'm thinking about, one thought is doing a bestiary and we kind of discussed that, but as far as just releasing it, as far as a normal zine format, just using stock art for the first one. Cause I got quotes. I thought, well, maybe if I do, the 2" by 3" I should get really good rates.
No,
And
they
then
don't
I
go
saw
much cheaper than quarter page, it seems like, for art.
but then first person gave me a quote like, that seems high. I went to another person who's doing work for me, who's really good, very reasonable, and his came up even higher. And he said quarter of a page. And I thought, of course, they're not drawing a little 2 by 3 square. They're taking a half page, drawing the half page, and then we're just shrinking it down. It's like, then it hit me when I saw his quote. It's like, of course. And so like with the bestiary, it's like, that's, if you do a picture per item and your first one's like say 14 creatures, if it's $50 a piece, there's $700 just in art.
Yeah,
I
that's the
I
other
did
thing, man.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, for people listening to this that are thinking about going into this kind of thing, art is so expensive and it's worth every penny. If you're an artist out there, man,
Right.
I wish I could pay you 3 times what I pay you, because I know what kind of skill you got and what kind of effort you're putting in, but I just can't. And it's so expensive. It's just unbelievably expensive.
Yeah, for a 30-page zine, for this one person who quoted it, who's got a quirky art style that I really like, they quoted in a way that I needed, I think, almost $2,000
Wow.
at the price point I want to sell it at. I want to sell it at $8. I think I want to do an $8 zine. I just want to do $8. But I need about $2,000 if I were to do that to be able to break even with me doing all the writing and everything else. So, I mean, my choice then is to increase the pay more, or the cost more, is one option. The other option is to, I think what I'm going to do. So my goal is to do all the zines and then put them together into a perfect bound book. But what I use is the zines to fund the project. So I think what I'm going to do is the very first one, just use strictly stock art. If it funds really well, then use those funds to pay for the art for the second one.
Yeah, build it as it goes. Yeah. Smart.
But if that never happens, I'll just release a paperback book at the end, with just stock art.
Coloring book, huh?
Well, yeah, no, it will be actually be Dean Spencer's stock art. So it will be, it's Monster Manual style, but but
let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
You go ahead.
That thought. I'm going a whole nother direction. Finish that thought.
I don't know. I don't know that the thought, I think the thought might have been.
I interrupted. I was just going to ask, because one of the things I'm curious about is that concept of releasing, small volumes and then the omnibus with everything in it. I've seen a lot of people out there doing that right now. And I wonder how many of the people that bought all the small versions go on to buy the hardbound version or the collected version. Does it transfer very well or not? I just don't know.
Here's what I'm planning on doing. I think there's two things. And I've also thought about your project because Chris, a little late for this newest one, but I'll go through both of these. So what I'm planning on at this moment is to do, my plan is to do a write-up of the old school essentials bestiary. But the write-up is going to be a different style of write-up. It's going to be more ideas for the GM rather than just generic
stats.
Pros. Yeah. So the idea is each one would be evocative, right? Like give you really solid ideas, what to do with a bandit, what to do with a berserker, give some more background, some thoughts. So like, oh, these are some things to do with him, or here's a background that would make it more interesting, at least narratively, than just, oh, it's just a bandit or it's just a berserker. So my thought was, if I could charge as low as I can for the zine, and it's do A through Z or A through Z, depending from Canada or from the US, then once that's done, I think what I'm going to do is offer, do a Kickstarter. I'm going to do the Kickstarter for the Perfect Bound is to offer those people at, like, say, a $1 tier to sign up with the Kickstarter, that I would, they would get there would be an add-on that they could buy the perfect bound at cost. So whatever that be, it may have to do it through BackerKit, but it's like, okay, so it may, improve paper costs, whatever it is. And at the end, it's like, okay, it's going to be $6, or it's going to be $7, and they can pay that. And that would be a reward for the people backing all the zines all the way through.
Early adopters, yeah.
And then also partway through, somebody says, hey, I'm starting midway, offer to still have stock on hand for people wanting to buy in on earlier issues as well. But it's still good enough. You could grab any one. I realize, if people are there for the ride, they should be rewarded. And the idea is to use a Kickstarter to actually fund a project at the end. And maybe at that point, the total amount that I have will fund art at that point. I don't know. And just do a formal Kickstarter.
It's almost surreal when you think about it. We're talking about using Kickstarter to selling a product on Kickstarter so that you can sell another product. I mean, that's like Kickstarter was supposed to be that to begin with, right? You're supposed to be able to start with the collected works, but it just doesn't work that way anymore, does it?
No, but Vasily did his dungeon, and he's doing a mega dungeon, one zine at a time.
Like level by level kind of idea.
Yeah, and I thought, genius. The man's genius. Genius. Well, he's genius in more ways than one, because I actually looked at the font choices that he did. He used a very it was called a display font, not very readable, but he used it in his for headings. And I just started looking at that, wondering at that choice, and it works very well. He is definitely taking something that really isn't always the best one for readability, but the way he used it, it works really, really, really well. So whatever he does, he thinks through. I just could be more like Vasily.
Yeah, I'm a font junkie, man. When I'm laying things out, I always gotta like slap my own hand and be like, no, 3 fonts is enough. You don't need 10 in this. You don't need.
Yeah,
I love fonts.
So
that's cool.
The other thing I was thinking about too is with what you're doing, even the previous one is take this, let's say your 100-page, your Magnus Opus, your 100-page Magnus Opus. Could it be chunked down into 10 or 8,
one
whatever,
night's worth of session or whatever you got?
40-page zines, adventures, and that each one you'd find like the narrative, the beats, separate those things out, and then at the end of each one have a basically like kind of like what you did. You could have a canned conclusion, and then or you could go to the next adventure, so people could be satisfied either way. And the same thing with each adventure. It could lead from the previous one, or you could say, the story so far.
Do you have Tom Wilson's Back to Basics?
No.
So he did that, and he's a guru for this whole Kickstarter thing. He's that guy that like does a whole bunch of like really cheap, couple of Kickstarters. So this Back to Basics, I didn't get into it. I actually got in on it on the omnibus level where he published the hardbound book. And that was another treasure. I mean, that was for the price it was $20 for, I don't know how many pages it is, but it's thick. And it's got all sorts of stuff in it. But at any rate, originally when he was publishing those as separate magazines, each one had an adventure that got you to the end of that portion, and then was continued in the next zine, kind of like what you're talking. And so that was really cool to see it play out through 10 volumes to the final scenario. And then on top of that, he's got just standalone adventures in those. If anyone out there that plays, fantasy gaming, especially VX, man, I highly recommend go get Back to Basics. It's just jam-packed full of cool stuff. Multiple adventures in each one. Really good maps by Monkey Blood. I don't know if you've seen what is that, Glenn Seal's mapping, but he's good stuff.
Well, not to go down the rabbit hole, but this is some other thoughts I had. Apparently, the thing I thought too was, I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of this will come in a later podcast of people reading, people buying adventures to use versus people buying adventures to read. But I thought if you divided it up, you could almost do subscription. There may be some people who be willing to subscribe to it, and you could do that through Patreon, I believe. So there may be a value too of, you know, maybe taking something large like that, and then chunking up and then distributing it accordingly. I don't know.
Yeah, I talked to Jim Wampler about that a little bit, just briefly, because that's kind of my thing. I would love to have a subscription to something like Scientific Barbarian, where it just comes in the mail. I got to worry about it. I paid for it, you know, every couple months or whatever. Boom, hey, another issue, great. You know, reliving the Dragon and Polyhedron days. You know, but he said that he looked into it. There's just no viable way to do it that actually works as far as, you know, production schedule and you know, like you can't really do it on Kickstarter because it can't be fulfilled since it's, you know, until the end of the year or whatever.
I think Patreon
might be. Yeah.
So what I did is I talked to someone from a fairly large independent publisher. They're looking at doing stuff on Patreon where it will charge when you go to, so they would pay, like, say for instance, the subscription is $20. So then whenever you go to ship it, you just charge them the $20 and it would ship out. So you wouldn't be charged a monthly. It would be charged when you're shipping it out.
When you're ready. Yeah.
And they would subscribe to that level. So you say, you know, I haven't looked into it myself, but I think you can set it up that way. The problem is if you don't have a large enough fan base, you're probably not going to get a large enough people to be able to do that without kickstarting it. But also in hindsight, whoever's doing that's not going to be on your Kickstarter either. So
yeah, there's not enough crossover between the two platforms maybe to get
but
it.
If you're a publishing company that's well known, you can. But anyway, I still think that's something to explore, and that may be something I'll explore with the bestiary.
Well, I know I'm a customer on that kind of thing. I really would love to have something like that.
Yeah, and I think it's and it wouldn't be very difficult to do, and it bypasses a lot of other things with dealing with Kickstarter. But you're still having to deal with Kickstarter because you're still going to get your volume. You're going to need at least 100 books probably before you publish anything. But anyway, that's a thought. I don't know, but something to look at. But yeah, exactly. So if somebody says I like a thing, why not just get a subscription and they just keep getting it, and everybody's pleasantly surprised when they get it in the mail.
For sure. We all have that little kid in us that, you know, oh, I got mail today and it's not a bill. All right.
Oh, exactly. So, yeah, and I think so. You know, you've been doing the Mutant Crawl Classics. So is this the muse that you're following? Is it you plan to keep going this direction, or you just?
Well, yeah. I mean, I got 3 more of them in some stage of development, but like, I mean, you and I talked. One of my big summer projects is I want to get a bestiary for MCC developed. I've got some ideas of how to do that, kind of like what you're saying, where you could do it in installments. I kind of want to go a different direction than the zine thing, but so I'm kind of working on that. But my real love is developing game systems, and I've got like several of those that I had already published under a different company back in the early 2000s that I want to bring back, and now that I've had more experience as a designer, kind of tweak them. And then I've got my big love right now is I got a game system called the Dare Luck Club, which is kind of like a Goonies themed game. So I absolutely love writing for it. It's so zany and fun, but it's, you know, it's really hard to get people to buy into a game system, especially.
Well, that's a fat book you've got there for that Dare Luck. I did not realize it was so much.
Yeah, it's I don't know, around 210 pages with the index, but you're talking about going color. I wanted to go color, you know, because it's kids and stuff, so I wanted to have it colorful and stuff. But yeah, that really wasn't a good decision as far as price point goes, because you know, even the softbound version here, I think is $40 for full color and 200 some pages.
Do you think about paring it down, chunking it up?
I thought about it. It really it's got a really big portion of it is like creatures and information on like a fake Midwestern town. And I thought really, I could pull that stuff out and have that just be like little separate booklets and have, just the rules together. I don't know, they probably, with all the items and stuff like that in it, the rules would probably only be maybe 110 pages. So
if you could get that, that's 110 page, you're talking about 110 pages of 8.5 by 11.
Yeah. But it's got pretty big margins and it's got a lot of white space. I mean, it's not.
I'd look at doing it maybe as like a 6 by 9 or 5.5 by 8.5 and seeing if you can get it down even smaller.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, I have this, I don't know, thing stuck in my mind that, 8.5 by 11, that's an RPG sized book. And I need to get with the program. I mean, so many of the newer publishers are going with the smaller formats, and they are nice formats to have. They take up less shelf space.
Yeah, because if you think if it's like, maybe it's like $25 for the main one, but then you could have like the quote unquote supplements, they only be like maybe $10 a piece, and they're only like maybe 28-page zines, and they're black and white, and everybody's happy, and you could have a lot of different ones out there. And you can do a subscription service. And it may help you too when you want to do something new. You're like, you know what? I got some derelict club stuff I want to do. I can just throw out an 8-page PDF or whatever, or maybe a 28-page zine, and just you could just do it in little pieces, or just put them out on a newsletter and then collect once you get enough of them, then collect it into a zine. I think that maybe I think for me, doing things smaller makes it easier to wrap one's head around and being able to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
But
I think, that's the theme, I think, of our talk today, is that format is king, that how you parse something out and how you go to print can really change, what you can offer and at what price. And
yeah. And I think the thing is like, expectations and what works. I mean, the nice thing about zines is they fit in the hand real nicely. They are at a low enough price point for printing. They're not too bad, but they are definitely limiting in size and amount of information. And they're not the end all be all, but I think in general, I think with people who are, I'll call them, more willing to delve into independent games, it's definitely much more. I think that's a much more it can be a more attractive format.
Sure, yeah. No, but it's some of the stuff I picked up recently that's in that format, like the old school essentials and Tom's books, really have persuaded me that you don't have to. I always thought you'd be giving up a lot to go down to that size, but it's all in how you lay it out, and it can hold its own for sure.
But I think like with what you're doing, the Mutant Crawl Classics and that style, that format, I think it fits exactly that line. I mean, that's what they put out. Like if I'm doing old school essentials bestiary, I'm going to make it so that when that trade paperback or that paperback's trimmed, it's going to be the same size as that of the hardback books.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to look just like that book. I'm not going to do it, but if I were to be putting out something for 5th edition D&D, I wouldn't be doing a zine. I would use a traditional format for that.
And just kind of keep with the feel and look of the line that you're writing for, kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm not saying you couldn't do a zine for 5th edition, but I'm just saying it's like, but I think sometimes people have certain expectations with certain, product lines. And it's kind of like with D&D 5th edition, you better kind of have a certain style of trade dress. You know, it's kind of same with Mutant Crawl Classics or Dungeon Crawl Classics, is even beyond just the format. You know, you're not going to want to run a straight, I won't say straight adventure, but you're not going to run a straight adventure probably with either one of those, because it's designed to crank up the dials, right? So,
Yeah.
you know, you're not just going to port over, keep on the Borderlands. What fun is that? You know? And so you're going to want to be able to, you know, you want dramatic things to happen in very unexpected ways, but likewise, those things wouldn't necessarily fly for a 5th edition adventure for most.
Yeah, I think that's, you know, if you're going to write for another system, at least my take on it has been, is you got to sit down and analyze, you know, what is it that's an expectation in the system. So like for Mutant Crawl Classics, like you're saying, you got to dial everything up one more notch than what you might be comfortable with. And you got to have the random charts. That's a big one in there. Lots of cool random charts of things that can happen.
Yeah. Because people want to be surprised. The GM wants to be surprised. The players want to be surprised. They want to roll. And if they fail and everybody winds up in flames, everybody's happy.
Yeah. They're laughing all the way to the trash can with their character sheet, you know? But on the new project, I did 10 spells. Have you looked at DCC spells before?
I have the
formatted?
book and PDF, but I played Dungeon Crawl Classics, so I'm familiar with it when I played at the con.
Okay, so like instead of just being able to write up a spell and have it do a thing, the spells all have their own random tables of, you know, if you cast it at a really, you know, successful rate, it does like this whole crazy, you know, your fireball goes from being the size of a room to being, you know, the size of a nuclear bomb kind of thing.
Or it could be the reverse too.
You light a match kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I've never written, you know, I've played DCC, and you know, you think you play something, you know it, but when you go to write for it, it's a whole nother thing. That, you know, to come up with a spell and to come up with multiple levels of what it does, and make them all, you know, different from each other, but not, you know, hit that power spiral too quickly where, you know, by the end it's doing something that's just a total game wrecker. That's tough.
Well,
and now I've got the challenge. Good.
It's not like rolling a D. You don't just roll a D20 and the chart goes from 1 to 20. That'd be simple. Because the idea is, I think you add your levels to it, but you also burn your stats to add to it.
There's a lot of things that end up affecting it. Yeah, you get stats in there. Your level.
So you want to be strategic in burning stats, but doesn't guarantee anything. So the idea isn't just like, okay, a 20 is a critical success and a 1's a critical fail. Well, I mean, something crazy might be like, I can't remember, like 40 or whatever, or
usually 35. Once you're past 30, yeah.
So you got to burn some stats to get into that level, but then once you're in that range, things can get more uncontrollable at that range too.
Yeah, so like a monster summoning spell at 30 summons like a whole herd of the monsters, you know. So yeah, it gets it, but it's hard to do because you got to think of all the ways something can spiral up. I mean, you've got like duration that can change, you got range that can change, maybe damage, or, you know, numbers of things, or and it's also hard to make sure that as you're stacking, it's stacking vertically and not horizontally. In other words, like, you know, if you have a spell where you're going to I don't know, like one of my spells in my book is creating an elemental creature. So for the next level up of success, it's like, well, do I have it have more than one creature, or do I have it have a more powerful creature? Now, if I go more powerful and I want to later have more than one, now I have 2 more powerful creatures, which, you know, might have more of an exponential advantage to it, you know. But if I go the other way, you know, it's a lot harder to do them than I thought it was going to be. And then the other thing is, and I love DCC, but I think the spell charts look horrible. I mean, they're just these real like graphs, you know, they're not graphs, but tables. With black bars and everything. So I'm really playing around in layout to, you know, how can I make it so it's usable but visually appealing to do all these different levels and die results and all this.
Yeah, and right. And I think people will appreciate that because they don't necessarily I think the thing is some of those books, there's some layout choices I never really cared for, but I think improving that's always it's a good thing. But it's like again too, it's like but even going back to like, they all probably follow a similar style format. You don't want to necessarily even violate, going to a very, let's say, one style being more verbose, the other being very terse. It's like you kind of got to be careful about that because people are locked into something. They're locked into something, and they don't want generally a lot of
This
variation.
doesn't feel right. Yeah.
So yeah, in fact, the Dungeon Crawl Classics, Community Crawl Classics, I thought about like taking Fane and maybe doing something along those lines later on, but I would definitely would pay somebody to do the to give it the Mutant Crawl Classics thing or Dungeon Crawl Classics because I know I don't have it. I mean, it takes a lot of chops to do that well. It's very apparent when you play it. It's like, no, that's not me just sitting down and wing. Like with old school essentials, you can just wing it, right? So spells are spells. The bestiary, okay, no big deal. It's converting over. But I think with Dungeon Crawl Classics, you're really wanting a spin. But yeah, it's hard. It's hard. But I know there's a lot of opportunities. And you also talking about going back to your older stuff. I found there's some older stuff I want to republish, but then when I go back and look at it, I think, oh, I just need to reformat and polish it a bit. I realize my writing's changed. It's like, no, I have to re-edit all this.
Yeah,
I probably have to rewrite some of this.
It's you're a different person now than you were 10 seconds ago, let alone 5 years ago or whatever. I mean, yeah, can't just polish it up. I get that. Yeah.
Well, I hope I've gotten better, but I think part of it is I've been doing more of it. So from the start of writing to where I'm at now, not that where I'm at now is any level to be commended, but there's still at least an incremental improvement. And so
Well, and from what we just talked about at the beginning of the show, you and I, we both ended up in the same situation with this. We go back to polish something, and we're just going to kind of go off into these other directions. It'll be a whole nother thing by the time you're done with it. It won't even be just an update of the old thing.
Yeah, and what I did is one of the things I did early on was basically use the reaction tables from the BX to be able to use really with any game, and it kind of didn't really expand out, but I kind of really looked at it a different way that that a person could change other people's attitudes. But then looking at it again, it's like there's probably some other things I need to add too. So I don't know. It still is pay what you want. So I was thinking about actually putting that, maybe that was another one I was thinking about just doing for like a 2-week Kickstarter or a 1-week Kickstarter, just do a short zine, charge a little bit of money and just look at enough money just to get a small print run and not really worry about anything else because it's really not a graphics heavy type thing, but we'll see. Yeah, I don't know. Well, I know we're
time continuum, as you say.
Yeah, I think we're hitting that. Probably like a few things I talked about before we actually hang up. So, but anyway, thanks, Lou, for joining me. I appreciate it.
Anytime. This is fun.
Man, that Kickstarter, man, anybody out there, just go throw your $20 in.
Appreciate it.
You need it. Yeah, not you need it. You out there need it. Yeah, it's a lot of energy, a lot of output for $20. Best value you're going to get, I believe, out there. So anyway, you take care, Lou, and we'll have to have you on again this year.
All right. Thank you so much, Jeff.